Hello and welcome to the show. This podcast is about health and home and the real lives we're living inside of both. The environments we live in, the choices we make for our families, and the weighted factors that shape those choices. I'm your host, Holly Jean Mullen. I'm a functional health practitioner turned wellness-focused realtor in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My work sits at the intersection of health and home, and over the years, I've worked with families navigating chronic health issues, environmental stressors, and big life transitions. What I have learned is that nothing exists in isolation. What's happening in the body, the home, and our personal lives often are connected. In a world that loves quick fixes and sound bites, this show makes room for nuance, for thoughtful conversations with practitioners, parents, professionals, and the people with lived experience, all trying to make grounded, intentional decisions for their health and their homes. If you've ever felt like there was more to the story, or you're simply trying to live well where you are, you're in the right place. Hello, welcome back to the Health Starts at Home podcast. I am excited for today's guest and today's conversation. My guest today is Samantha Jones. She is a certified natural health practitioner, a holistic and bioenergetic practitioner, and she's currently wrapping up her certification as a traditional naturopath. Samantha is located here in Tulsa. She practices at Holistic Health 180, and that's at the Body Masters gym. And she works with the body from a root cause, systems-based perspective, and that is why I wanted to have her on the show today. I love that she looks beyond symptoms, beyond quick fixes, and looks into what the body is actually communicating. She has a really great story, so we're going to be talking about energy, regulation, personal responsibility, I think, maybe at some point, and what real healing looks like when you stop chasing protocols and those one-size-fits-all things and start working with your body instead of against it. This is a great story of connecting dots and hindsight. So welcome to the show, Samantha.
Thank you, Holly. Happy to be here.
I know we've been planning on doing this for a long time now, so I'm glad it's finally happening. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your practice now, and then we'll back up and talk about how we got here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, I'm a certified bioenergetic practitioner. I used bioenergetic testing to test the body and get to the root cause. So we're looking for imbalances in the body's energy, essentially. So we're all made of energy. And when we get out of balance, that's how we get things like chronic illness. So we want to figure out why and get to the bottom of it.
All right. I love it. And okay, so then let's start with, how did you even get into this work?
So I will say my son brought me here. So I can thank him for that. To go back to the very, very beginning of the story, I struggled with infertility. We had our daughter and we didn't have any trouble getting pregnant. It actually happened much faster than we anticipated and everything was great. We moved back to Oklahoma right when she turned a year old and we wanted to have another baby. And it just didn't work out like that. We tried and tried. And after a year of trying, we were finally told, okay, you're struggling with infertility. But they said they didn't know why. It's undiagnosed infertility. They have no idea what's going on. So they ran all the tests. Everything seems perfect. They have no idea what's happening. We did fertility treatments. I did get pregnant once. I had a miscarriage or continued to just have all sorts of issues. We decided that we were going to move. The house that we had purchased was a large house. We planned on having multiple children and it being our forever home. And I think I just got into this depressive state that was like, that's never going to happen for us. So let's downsize. And I was going through a lot of health issues at the time with my heart. I was on a heart monitor. crazy things were happening. I was in the most depressed state I've ever been in my life. And I wanted security as far as financially, like if something happened to me, because honestly, I thought I was dying. I was writing goodbye letters to my daughter. I wanted financial security if something was to happen to me and my income. So we were going to downsize, pay off our house. We actually did the whole Dave Ramsey thing and we moved. And after we moved, I actually got pregnant naturally with my son. So that was wonderful. We were excited. It was perfect pregnancy. Everything was great. And then he was born and he was perfect. And then 2 weeks later, he was. He actually completely stopped breathing. He turned blue. He made this shrill sound that I've never heard in my life right before it all happened. Well, prior to that, he had been sleeping for a very, very long time. I could not wake him up for his feeding. It was impossible. So I had already become concerned. And then that happened. Dialed 911. The ambulance came completely unresponsive. I mean, in the ambulance, they're trying to insert an IV. It was horrible. We got to the hospital and they immediately took him and they did a spinal tap on him and he was completely unresponsive during the spinal tap. They told us they had no idea what was happening or why he was unresponsive, especially during that. So we were admitted into pediatric intensive care. And at that point, they were running tests on his brain and everything you could imagine. The doctor came in and she essentially told me, like, your son has brain damage and we don't know how severe. You'll have to find out once he starts trying to hit his milestones and go from there. They told us several other things. There was a hole in his heart. There was a spot on his brain. Just all sorts of things. I was devastated. Obviously, my perfect baby that had a perfect pregnancy was not perfect anymore. So we were there for over a week. We did get moved out of the intensive care unit once he opened his eyes, and we were in a regular room, but they were still running all kinds of tests. He would constantly stop breathing. They used him as essentially a pincushion is what I felt like. It was constant and no one was talking with each other. Like it connect. They all had their own specialty, like most doctors do. And no one was talking to each other and trying to find out what's going on with this baby. It's this person works with this and this person works with this, and they're not related, which I've started to realize, like, this is not right. He is one child and all of these things are related. We were released from there with no answers except meningitis. So they did diagnose him with meningitis and pumped him full of bags and bags of antibiotics into my 2-week-old baby. We went home for a day and then we were admitted to St. John. So once we were in the PICU at St. John, it was a whole different experience. I did have one doctor and one nurse for most of the time, and they were trying to get to the root cause of what was going on. Okay, sorry. But okay. Anyway, so once he was stabilized and they felt like we could go home, the doctor essentially told me, like, you can take him home and figure out how to deal with all of this at home, or I can keep him here until college, is literally what he told me. So we left the hospital with monitors and that's it, our baby and monitors. So he was on 2 different monitors that would constantly go off throughout the night whenever his oxygen levels would get too low. And we would wake up and we would kind of wake him up and then he would start breathing again and then go back to sleep and it would happen all over again. Once we got through that, it was like a breath of fresh air. He was about a year old or almost a year old, and it's the monitors had stopped going. So I felt, oh, I can actually breathe again. Like I could enjoy my baby, all these
So
things.
from just like a few weeks old to a year old, that was your life.
That was our, I mean, I nursed him exclusively, and I would be nursing and he would just stop breathing. I called 911 several times, being home alone with him. I was just here. I never wanted to be alone with him. I would always ask my mom to come over, my sister to come over whenever my husband was going to be gone. I was terrified, terrified.
And
So
all this time, you're still having to be a mom to your other
yeah,
child, too.
yes. So I did have a 7-year-old whenever he was born. So thankfully, she's very independent. But yeah, it was so hard. So finally, when that stopped happening, we're like, oh, we can start enjoying life again. His first birthday was coming up. So I brought a Whole Foods cake, diet free, all the things. The child had been exclusively breastfed and had vegetables and fruit. It didn't cross my mind that I should have introduced milk or eggs or wheat or any of the things, right? Before we hand this cake to our 1-year-old. So we put it in front of him and we light the candle, and he immediately just starts screaming hysterically. And we thought it was the candle, the fire. And I remember telling him, it's okay. It's not going to hurt you. And blowing out the candle. And those words will haunt me forever. He would not want to, he did not want to take a bite of the cake. And so we were essentially forcing it. Here, taste it, try it. You're going to love it. I took some on my finger and I put it on his lips and put his hand in the cake. And all of a sudden, hives just start popping up all over his face. And then it goes to full body, head to toe, completely red. Like you couldn't see where one hive started and the other one ended. So I immediately call the pediatrician and they say, give him Benadryl. And that was essentially it. Give him Benadryl and then we'll schedule an appointment to do allergy testing. So I did. Thankfully, he was okay. We did the allergy testing. The blood testing actually came back negative. And they said, we don't know what happened. He's not allergic to anything. You're fine to feed him whatever. Okay, that's very strange, but okay. So my daughter had a popsicle, and it was a banana cream popsicle and I did not put two and two together about it being cream. Banana popsicle is all I thought. She was like, can he have some? And I said, yes. She gave him a bite of this popsicle, and essentially we are head to toe hives again. And I was like, it's milk. It's milk. He has to be allergic to milk. So we go to the allergy clinic. They did skin testing, and he was over the top allergic to milk. We left there with a prescription for EpiPens, and me thinking everything in my house has milk in it. What are we going to do? So that started our next health journey. And I felt like I just had a tiny glimpse of a normal life. And then we had this. So I was trying to keep dairy for my daughter and then not for him. And it got to the point where it ended up so scary to have it in her house because one time she had poured out a bowl of cereal in the sink and she had got milk on her finger, and then she touched him and he got hives. One time I was flipping a pancake. It had fallen off the griddle. I picked it up. It had milk in it. It was cooked. He came up to me in his diaper and I picked him up and he got hives. So I said, that's it. We're done. We cannot have dairy in this house whatsoever. So we removed all the dairy. Strange things started happening. He got to where when he would get in the bath, his hands would just get really wrinkly and his feet would get wrinkly to the point where he was so he was in so much pain, he was crying. And so he couldn't be in a bath. I took him to the doctor. They tried to tell me that it was genetic and they needed to do genetic testing and all of this crazy stuff that they wanted me to do, but no one had real answers. So one day I was on Instagram and I saw this woman's story about her child and how she almost died and she got meningitis. And the story of what she said, the shrill that came out of her baby's mouth, then she stopped breathing. She turned blue. Then she went to the hospital, was diagnosed with meningitis. I was like, that's my story. That sounds exactly like what happened to us. She said it was caused by the Hep B vaccine. Check the inserts of the vaccine, and meningitis is actually a side effect to the vaccine. Well, we had not gotten any more vaccines after the ones that were given at birth. With my daughter, I delayed them, and with him, we were delaying until I really felt comfortable. And with everything going on, I didn't feel comfortable. But then with that, I started dating. Do I feel comfortable ever? We went to the pediatrician at one point after he was diagnosed with his dairy allergy, and we were going to be going to Disney World. And he tried to get me to give my son a vaccine that actually contained milk, knowing that he had a dairy allergy. Well, I didn't know it contained milk when he was telling me this, but he's like, you need to get this vaccine before you go. So I said, well, let me go home and think about it. And then, we have a couple months till we leave, I'll come back. I started doing my research, realizing it had milk in it and that so many children had actually gone into anaphylaxis receiving that vaccine that had a milk allergy. And I thought, this makes zero sense. This is our pediatrician. He's supposed to be knowledgeable on all of these things, but he doesn't know anything about food allergies. And all he knows is vaccine. And that's what I do. And like, why are these people not working together? And my son could have died if I would have just been like, oh, okay, that's great. So that was another red flag, essentially, of the doctors not getting to the root cause and not looking at the whole child. We decided, okay, no vaccine. So over the next several years, a lot of this is looking back and realizing things that were happening with him as time went on. So he had a little nose tickle that we noticed, and he would constantly just scrunch his nose. And looking back at videos of him, we see him doing it all the time and didn't think anything of it at the time. He ended up becoming chronically stuffy to the point where he had to have a nasal surgery, and they reduced his turbinates and removed his adenoids, even though I did not want that done. And we had a little relief, but not much. He started doing an eye tip where he just squinted his eyes constantly. And when I would ask people about it, they're like, oh, it's normal. My child did that for a while. They outgrow it. The doctor was like, oh, I wouldn't worry about it. So I didn't worry about it. It wasn't until an allergist put him on Zyrtec, and he had this crazy reaction where he actually went into a complete rage. I'm talking, I had to leave the grocery store with my toddler, kicking, screaming, pulling my hair. He was the sweetest, kindest, most loving, calmest child. So this was completely out of character for him. I got even people would comment, oh my gosh, he's so calm for a boy. He's so sweet. So this was like, okay, something's not right here. It happened again with the Zyrtec, the next dose of Zyrtec. So I put the two and two together, and I was like, there's something in this medication that is causing him to go into these rage fits. So we took the Zyrtec away, and sure enough, they went away. Then he developed severe OCD. I'm talking would not touch a doorknob in our own home OCD. He was washing his hands nonstop. They were bleeding. He wouldn't flush the toilet. He wouldn't, after he turned the water off, or water on, he wouldn't turn it back off. One day, my husband was in the restroom with him, and he got so mad because he wouldn't open the door to leave. And he was like, just touch the doorknob. It's not going to hurt you. Again, with that, it's not going to hurt you, Frey. He grabbed my son's hand and put it on the doorknob, and he literally fell to the ground, hysterical, just shattered. I didn't understand. I was like, what is happening? Again, the pediatrician, well, some kids just go through this. It's just a stage. Fine, he'll grow out of it. Everything seemed to be he'll grow out of it. Obviously, looking back, and there's so much more. He had reactions at school whenever they tore down a wall in the classroom, and then they repainted and they put down new carpet. I actually had to pull him from the class. He's actually in that class now, 2 years later, with an air purifier in that room, and he's totally fine. But at the time when it happened, he could not be in that classroom. So I knew something was going on with him, but I didn't know what, and no one could tell me anything. We went to doctor and after doctor, an allergist, and the ENT. And finally I was like, okay, there has to be something different. So we started seeing a chiropractor. And the chiropractor, said, well, I can help him with his stuffiness and his sinuses, and we'll get his body regulated and back on track. I saw a little improvement, but nothing significant. And then we saw a naturopath. And she helped us. She was the first person to actually help us. He started feeling better. He started looking better. The dark circles went away under his eyes. And that's when I knew, okay, there's something to this. There's no doctor or allergist or ENT that is going to look at my son and try to understand what's actually happening inside his body. We started talking about our house that we were currently living in. And so that house we had purchased as a foreclosure, and we redid the whole thing. So I thought that was a great thing, except for we put a ton of chemicals into our house when we did that. And the house was on a golf course. I never thought twice about how many chemicals they pour onto golf courses that came into our yard. And my child rolled in the grass. He actually rolled down the hills of the actual golf course. So it's about 900 to 1,300 pounds of chemicals a year that they put on golf courses. Yes. My dog was tracking it into our home, getting in our bed where we sleep. There were power lines on the golf course, not far from our house, that we would take walks under and make comments about, oh, do you hear the buzzing from the power line? Uh-huh. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And they put the first cell tower about half a mile from our house. And it bothered me when it went up. But I thought, oh, it's far enough away that that's not a big deal. But when the second one came, it was only 0.3 miles from our home. And it started with one little circle, and it grew to 2, and then it grew to 3. And I knew that was a problem. Like, that bothered me a lot. to where I was like, okay, I really don't think we should live here anymore. But started to think even farther into it. The house was a foreclosure and they were smokers. The walls, the insulation, it was all filled with smoke to the point where in the bathrooms, when the humidity would get too high, you could actually see something running down the wall, which I later found out was the nicotine seeping out of the walls in our home. My daughter moved bedrooms, and the original bedroom she was in actually had a fan put into it because that's where the father would smoke in the house, was sitting in that bedroom looking out to the golf course. So I can't even imagine how toxic that room was. Outside of that room was the smart meter. And inside the closet, the trickle panel inside her closet. And she had eventually said, I don't like this room. I can't sleep in here. I feel weird. We moved your rooms and things got better. So all of that being said, our house was toxic to our child. And we eventually found out that he's double MTHFR. So he does not detox. So every single one of those things was affecting his body at a super high rate. He was born into this house as a baby. So pound for pound, it affected him more than it affected any of us. And even though we were all way better there, because looking back now at our previous house where I had all of the infertility and the miscarriage and all of that, my daughter was diagnosed with asthma. My dog actually was prescribed an inhaler. My dog had never even heard of that before. My dog had seizures. My daughter had weird rashes all the time. She had night terrors. All of these, I was on a heart monitor. All of those things happened in that first house where I couldn't get pregnant. So whatever was going on there was affecting me, my gut, also affecting my gut. Everything that happened, every house I lived in during my childhood, the water bed that I slept in from the time that I was 2 until I was 16. Looking back, I realized every single one of those things played a part in my health. And I was just too toxic. My body could not handle a pregnancy because it was just trying to survive. So once I finally got into what I thought was a clean environment and got pregnant, that environment was actually not the best for the baby.
It was
That I
cleaner, but not better.
Yes. So, and we had cameras all over the house. Our Wi-Fi was constantly on. We had these can lights that were on dimmers, and I would hear them buzzing all the time. And I would tell my husband, I think there's something wrong with our lights. I can always hear them buzzing. Obviously, the EMFs that were coming out of those lights were crazy intense. So I would also notice if my son was playing a video game and it was a wireless video game, that we would have just complete meltdowns after we would try to take it away. So we switched to a corded gaming system and it got so much better, but still a problem. We're to the point now where we don't do iPads. We don't have any gaming systems, and our house is completely chemical free. All of these things that I know affect him, and I can tell if he has food dyes or he eats somewhere where they use certain oils that affect him. All of these things because his body can't detox. So the best thing that I ever did was tell my husband, listen, I am the only person in the world that's going to advocate for our son. And I need to go to school and learn everything that I possibly can to help him. And at the time, I had a marketing and promotions agency. I was the breadwinner of our family. It was kind of a shock of like, you want to do what? But I understand and I'll support you 100%. So that's what I did. And it was the best thing that I ever did for our family. It's the only way that he's thriving right now. I call him my full-time job because he is. I'm constantly scanning him and doing row sessions on him and doing detoxes on him because I have to. His body doesn't do it itself and it has to have lots of help, but I know how to do that. And for that, I'm super thankful.
You are like a true warrior mama.
Thank you.
But I mean, that's what we do for our kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. And how old is he now?
Almost 9. Yeah. Yeah. So, and to just kind of connect us together, we started looking for a new home, and I thought, there's not a realtor out there that's not going to think that I'm completely insane whenever I'm say, okay, so I'm looking for a house, but it can't be on a golf course by high frequency power lines, near cell towers, by a highway, by a factory, like all of these things. Most realtors will look at you like you're an alien. Like, what are you talking about? So I found you and I'm so glad I did because I was like, she doesn't think I'm crazy.
No, you're not crazy and you're not alone. So win-win.
Yeah.
You brought up a couple things that are really good to talk about. And one is like just going back, the whole disconnect in the medical system and the specialization. I feel like in the holistic health space, Western medicine gets a really bad rap, and it's not because people, I think doctors necessarily purposely do things wrong or that they don't care or that they don't try. It's just, I think the system is just set up wrong. And one of the blaring red flags is the fact that they don't talk to each other, is that they are so specialized and compartmentalized, is that they've removed the whole human element and they're only looking at those little pieces. And your story is like a perfect example of why that is not an appropriate model for all people. And so I just wanted to kind of like highlight that. But you also mentioned something that I think is really good is people also like to really knock social media and talk about how terrible it is and it's the downfall of society, but it's also where people can share their stories and connect, and it's where people can not feel so alone and they can find other people going through the same thing. Because if it weren't for social media, we would feel so alone and so isolated because we wouldn't be able to find others that are walking these same paths as us. So I'm glad that you actually found something that you were able to grasp onto and give you somewhere to start looking for answers.
Yeah. And I'm so thankful for that mom sharing her story because otherwise I think I would still be spinning my wheels of what happened that day. And I have an answer. So,
Yeah. I remember when I started going down the holistic rabbit hole when my son was a baby. He was born in 2011. Gosh, now I don't even remember when my kid was born. But the blogs were just starting to be cool. Like social media wasn't that big yet. Yeah, there was like MySpace was still around. Facebook was just still new. So it wasn't that big. And so trying to find anything like crunchy was still
Yeah.
kind of difficult. And I remember finding the wellness mama. She was like the OG in our world. And I remember just not feeling so alone when I found her. So I just remember that. It's like, yay, there's someone else talking about baby led weaning and cloth diapers. So that's nice. Okay. So in your business now, do you primarily work with clients that are severely sensitive, like your son, or more of a broad spectrum of people looking for answers? Or what are your typical type of clients, if there is a typical?
Very broad spectrum. I loved working with kids. I love working with clients that are in the same situation that I'm in because I feel a connection to them. And whenever I can see a difference in a child, that it so much joy. It's like, okay, there's a reason that I'm here, and this is why I do what I do. But broad spectrum, clients that just want to be healthier in general. They want to do some kind of detox or cleanse. They want to know what foods they're sensitive to, what diet's best for them, all the way up to mystery things that they have no idea how or why and what's going on.
Are you having those conversations of asking about like what's going on in your home environment? Because I feel like that really is a missing piece that people don't even think about or understand.
It's absolutely the missing piece. And I tend to actually start there because I think that is the most important piece. What's happening in your environment? And what are you doing that you could improve your environment? People are scrolling on their phones all night long. They're sleeping with them charging by their head and their Wi-Fi routers in their room. They don't even think twice about it. But once you mention it, they understand. Like, oh, that makes so much sense. Put an air purifier in your bedroom. Let's look around outside our home. What are some things that are happening outside our house? Get an EMF meter. Check how how is my bedroom? Do I have a smart meter attached to the outside of my bedroom? All of these things are water. Are we filtering the water that we're drinking? Most of the time. But let's take that one step further. Are we filtering the water that we're bathing in? If I say, hey, are you taking detox baths? Oh, yes, all the time. Well, with what water? That matters. So I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
was right. I was just saying when you were talking about your son in the bath, that's what I was thinking is like, oh gosh, what was in the water that he was reacting to?
exactly, exactly. So, and at the time, that didn't cross my mind at all. I, the dermatologist that said, it's genetic, let's do genetic testing. And then that's a crazy path when you think about it, when the simple answer could be putting a filter on the shower.
Yeah. And just to kind of like maybe people listening are still just kind of learning and figuring things out, but we're all born with different buckets. So we can just use your son as an example here. Like here you were like living in toxic home environments, and one sad reality of pregnancy is as women when we're pregnant, yes, we're growing babies and we're giving them nutrients and life, but pregnancy is also a form of detoxing. And we unfortunately dump the good and the bad into our little babies as we're growing them too. And so we're not all born with the same level of toxic burden or load. And so as we're going through life and collecting different exposures, it affects us differently. And so some people can say, oh, well, I'm totally fine and blow it off when someone is completely sensitive to something. And I think your story is a really good example of painting the picture of why that is and how that can play out in reality. And so I hope it helps people like just kind of get a real world understanding of what that looks like and why that might be.
Absolutely. And I always joke that my son's toxin bucket is a thimble. Literally, it's the size of a thimble. And that's something that I have to teach him to navigate with through life. I think about him leaving our house and maybe going and living in a dorm or his first apartment. And honestly, those things terrify me because I think, oh my goodness, what if? And how is he going to handle? How, is he going to even realize that he's starting to react to his environment? So I hope teaching him these things now, he's able to be in tune with his body and know whenever he's in a situation like that.
Yeah. And that's just why it's so important for us to control the things we can, because we can't always control the things we're exposed to out in the world and where we're going to live and the places we go. But we can control the food that we eat. We can control what goes on in our house and the products that we use. And even if you're someone who is relatively healthy and not having symptoms per se, your bucket is still filling up, whether or not you can feel it. And so those little micro decisions really do make a difference. And I mean, as a practitioner, and I would see this all the time when I would see clients, is people feel fine until, I'm using air quotes, all of a sudden something happens. And there's always like an all of a sudden, but it's never all of a sudden. It's always that bucket's been filling your whole life. And then something happens to get to that point where it tips or it starts to overflow. And that's when symptoms start to happen. That's when disease starts to present. And so if people can just remember that you're going through life filling up your bucket. And so you can make choices and you can do the little things to make a big difference.
Absolutely. And I honestly feel like he was born with a full bucket and that vaccine was what just sent him over the edge and it all spiraled out of control from there.
Yeah. And we talk about hindsight. Like I know before we started recording, we were talking about dots we've connected as we learned more, as we've grown and looking back. And there was a time in like my mid 20s when I went in for like a routine checkup with my doctor. And it was, I don't know, one of those seasons when whooping cough was going around and they wanted everyone to get a booster for that. And I didn't think anything of it. I was 25, 26. So I was like, sure. And a couple weeks after that, or I think it was just a couple weeks or so, I started having major neurological symptoms where I had to go in for testing for MS. And like, I didn't think anything of it. Looking back now, knowing what I know and seeing all the health things I had after that, it's like, oh, it makes sense now. Like I had an adverse reaction to that booster shot. And I still didn't know because when I was pregnant with my son, I made everyone get their booster before coming to meet him in the hospital. And I cringed thinking about being that person. But anyways, that could be a whole other show. Before we wrap up, I want to know about rife therapy and like how that plays in to your practice, because that absolutely fascinates me. I love it. I love the whole energetic medicine thing. And so if someone like is not familiar with it or maybe like a little bit skeptical about it, what can you share about how that works and how you use it?
So I use it in relation with the bioenergetic testing. So whenever I do run a scan on someone, it will give me specific rights codes for certain things that show up on their scan. But in addition to that, it's my favorite way to do lymphatic drainage. So going backwards, everything has a frequency, right? It's frequency therapy. And Royal Rife invented the Rife machine, and the American Medical Association actually stepped in and took that away from him back in the day. But you can find them now. And I use them in conjunction with the bioenergetic testing. So whenever I run a scan on someone, it will give me Rife frequencies that for specific things that we put into the Rife machine. But I love it for other reasons because it's the best lymphatic drainage I've ever found. So constantly, I'm using it for my son for lymphatic drainage. There's frequency to boost the immune system. So I use that one quite often. There's a frequency just to eliminate toxins in general. So I like to run that one and eliminate whatever you come in contact with from eating, drinking, breathing in life. And it's just really used to balance, again, the imbalances that we have going on in our bodies and bring us back to homeostasis to perform at our best.
Love it. One of my biggest goals with this show is to really just highlight our local practitioners and be a resource for people that are looking, because I think Tulsa does have some little hidden gems of practitioners, and you're one of them. So for someone who's looking to work with you, do you offer one-off sessions or packages, or how does that work? And what is the best place to find you aside from just going in person, like reaching out and scheduling with you?
Or Lily, I offer both single sessions as well as packages. I recommend doing multiple scans throughout the year because it kind of works as peeling back the layers of an onion. So the first scan that we're going to do isn't going to show everything that's going on in your body right now. It's going to show what your body wants to address right now. So we start with that, and then we can kind of move on as we peel back the layers. I do appointment only, so you can reach me by phone or email, and I'm inside Body Masters Gym at 103rd and Memorial.
Okay. I will make sure I get all your info, and I will put that in the show notes and link it up so everyone can find you that way. Looking at your health journey, are there things that you understand about health now more than you did when you first started? I feel like, given your story, yes, but I want to hear how you put a little bow on that.
Absolutely. I think the one thing that I learned is that it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. There's no quick fix. There's no magic pill. It's a lifestyle change completely and holistically. So that's every single aspect of your life: sleep, food, and our environment, and so much more, all put together. And that's what's going to change our health.
Yeah, it's definitely a mindset shift for sure. And it doesn't have to be so dramatic where you feel like it's going to ruin your life. I feel like a lot of people don't want to make changes because they think it's going to be hard or overwhelming, and it doesn't have to be. So that's actually a perfect lead into, what are some of the big misconceptions that you see people get stuck in?
That it's all or nothing. Literally, they're like, okay, so I need to go home and throw away all my cleaning supplies, all my makeup, switch out all my clothes, do all these things, throw away all my plastic containers, never use my microwave again. And I'm like, well, no, we don't have to run home and do all of that because you're not going to do any of that at that point. So Start slow, make small goals. When you run out of something, think, okay, what can I replace this with that's a healthier version that's better for my body and better for my environment? It doesn't have to be all at once. And I mean, do I want me to go home and unplug all of your Glade plugin?
Yes, please.
Absolutely, I do. Yes. And people don't understand that. I mean, I walked into houses that I was literally like, okay, well, this is a hard no. And I haven't even got past the front door because the smell was so strong that I knew there was no way my son could ever be okay in this environment, ever. I think that people get really overwhelmed and they're like, okay, water purifiers and um, air purifiers, and I have to do this and I have to do that. And to the point where they don't want to do any of it, but just taking small steps, they really do add up and they affect the entire family. So you changing your laundry detergent to a healthier detergent not only helps you, but you're helping your husband and your kids and even your pets. So it's a whole home, whole family situation.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And I think the key word there is overwhelm. So if you're talking to the mom right now who is wanting to make changes and she is feeling the overwhelm and like, I don't know where to start. There's so many things to do. She's staring at the elephant and doesn't know where to start eating. So what is your encouragement to that person right now who's just not knowing what to do and feeling that overwhelm?
Take a step back, breathe, and realize that you don't have to be perfect. Think about the 80-20 rule, and that applies here as well. We all have our 20%, right? There are things that I just honestly don't want to give up, but I know that the other 80% of my life is clean. So that 20% isn't going to be that bad. So I'm not telling you that you have to give up getting your nails done every week if that's the thing that makes you happy. It's not all or nothing. It's a little bit at a time. And finding like-minded friends and other moms is huge. When you can go on a play date and you're not having to worry about the child that your child's playing with having Skittles and Doritos and your child not understanding why they can't have them, it makes life a lot easier when you both bring healthy snacks for your kids and they're looking at each other going, I'm not different. I have friends that eat the same way that I do and parents that just believe in the same healthy ways. It makes life a lot easier.
Yes, I will fully agree with you there. Just listening to your story and where you started to where you are now, that's the perfect example of just taking it one step at a time and one day at a time and learning as you go.
Yeah. And you can only do what you can do mentally and physically. And you don't know what you don't know. So you can't beat yourself up about what you didn't know in the past and think, oh my gosh, I did this, and this. It's okay. Just move forward. That's all we can do because you will only be healthier and your family will only be healthier as you move forward.
Yeah. Do you know of any like good places for moms or families to start making like good connections? I know you like have homeschool groups and stuff, but aside from homeschool, like, do you know of like mom groups? I feel like I'm so far removed from that now. I don't even know.
There's a ton of Facebook groups. A lot of them are Oklahoma, but I think there are some Broken Arrow, like Natural Moms of Broken Arrow, Natural Moms of Tulsa, those things. Um, just reach out. I see posts all the time that say, Mama here with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old looking for friends, and the responses they get on their posts are crazy. There's so many of us out there looking for connection and looking for like-minded friends that it's not hard.
Okay. All right. I'll find some of those too and link them up as well. All right. Well, thank you so much for just coming on the show today and sharing your story, because I think it's important for people to hear that, one, they're not alone if they're trying to figure things out. They're not alone if they have children that are going through things that they're trying to find answers for. And if you're trying to navigate the medical system, just to take encouragement in this story that you can be empowered to be an advocate for your children and to take the unconventional route to find your own answers. No one's going to love your children and advocate more for your children than you as the parent. And so I love this story, and I love that you're here locally helping other people navigate all this stuff. So thanks for being on the show with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode. Before we wrap up, mom to mom, I want to say, if something in this conversation resonated with you, trust that. You don't need all the answers right now. Paying attention, asking questions, and taking things one step at a time is okay. And also, just a quick note, this conversation is for education and reflection. It is not medical advice. Every child, every body, and every home is different. And it's always important to work with professionals you trust when making decisions for your family. So thank you again to Samantha for joining me today and sharing her story. And thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.